Welcome to Kingdom of the Logos, a Christian program of critical thinking and adventure. I'm J. Dylan Proctor.
And I'm Amanda Sparrow.
And I'm Anthony Allegria.
And today in Chord Purgatory, we're going to be playing a game of Hot, Not, or Sanctified as we examine church history. Today we're going to be talking about Nicodemus, so let's get right into it. Nicodemus was a Pharisee and follower of Jesus mentioned in the Gospel of John. He is mentioned in John chapters 3, 7, and 19. He is associated with being born again and takes Jesus' body from the cross to give him a funeral. So who was Nicodemus? Often we think of Pharisees as villains, but Nicodemus is clearly associated with something other than villainy throughout the Gospel. Nicodemus was a Pharisee, and we should remember that the Pharisees were a sect of Jewish spiritual leaders who believed in a bodily resurrection, and they had some amount of popularity with the masses. Now, Nicodemus was also a member of the Sanhedrin, which were a group of rabbis serving in tribunals. One should think of the Sanhedrin in terms of a court system. Understanding that Nicodemus was not only a religious leader, but he was also part of the courts, is important to understanding his transformation into a follower of Christ. Knowing these details allows us to see the context in which Nicodemus is operating. When Nicodemus first appears in chapter 3, he seeks Jesus out in the night. It is important to note that Jesus does not address Nicodemus by a group identity, but instead as an individual. Nicodemus appears again in chapter 7, where the Jewish leaders want to assign guilt to Jesus without a trial, and Nicodemus challenges them in saying that it is improper for them to judge Jesus without first giving him a hearing. In chapter 19, Nicodemus appears again along with Joseph of Arimathea, who come to collect Jesus' body after Christ has died on the cross. They do not realize at this point that Jesus is going to resurrect from the dead. None of the 12 are found here, but instead, the disciples who come to bury Jesus are Nicodemus, Joseph of Arimathea, Mary Magdalene, another Mary, and possibly some other female followers of Christ. Alright, now the question is hot, not, or sanctified. What is Nicodemus in terms of theological inspiration? When we say hot, we mean that he is a positive theological inspiration or role model. If we say not, then he is not a good role model or theological inspiration. If we say sanctified, then we're saying only God's sanctified judgment can rule. All right, Amanda, what do you think on Nicodemus?
Well, I think the short answer is definitely hot, because Nicodemus, as a Pharisee, his pursuit is righteousness, right order, and he does all he can to investigate what is true righteousness, and he finds his answer in the life, the ministry, the death, and ultimately the resurrection of Christ. And he does so with such persistence and understanding and wisdom, and so I just think that definitely makes him a great, hot theological inspiration.
Very good. Anthony, what do you think?
Yeah, I would definitely say hot and follow Amanda's example. The way he investigates it is also, I find, to be really fascinating. It's completely awesome because, if it's really easy for us to look at the Pharisee and be like, wow, those guys are like totally not cool. Look at how they're treating Jesus. But whenever it comes to imagining that you're in the same position, you've studied the law your entire life, you've tried to make sure that the people are observant of it also, and then this guy comes on the scene and is like totally beating you at your own job, and then he's also saying some things that are very radical. It's not hard for me to imagine myself being in a little bit of uproar too, being like, whoa, this guy needs to calm down. But Nicodemus, he doesn't do that. He doesn't say this guy needs to calm down or anything like that. He's like, okay, let's go check this out then. He starts asking him questions about the kingdom, and even whenever he's faced with something that he doesn't understand, he still is like, okay, well, this isn't contradictory to anything I know yet. It's just new, and I haven't heard this before. So I'm going to hear this out and see if it aligns with everything else I know about the kingdom. And I think that is seriously awesome for Nicodemus.
Yeah, and I think those are very good analysis of who Nicodemus is. And I also would say hot on theological inspiration as Nicodemus goes. Though I want to give credit where credit is due. Last night we had in our study here at the church, we were looking at the character of Nicodemus. And there were a few people who were members of my congregation who had brought up a couple of aspects of Nicodemus. One is, when he first comes to Jesus in the night, is he coming as in somebody who's personally interested, or is he coming as somebody in the official capacity of perhaps being a member of the Sanhedrin, or even as a Pharisee wanting to know more about this Jesus so maybe they can better bring evidence against him or whatnot, but is actually coming in the official capacity, not actually having personal interest. Which, either way, I think it's interesting that he is actually looking for evidence and looking for true justice. He's not making preconceived judgments. He's not going off what the mob or other people say. He is looking for personal evidence and something tangible evidence-wise to bring in a persuasive way, one way or another. And I think that's really cool. Another aspect of this is that Nicodemus is very much interested later. Again, we know that Nicodemus knows Jesus from pretty much the start of his ministry in the Gospel of John to the end. But there in the middle, in chapter 7, where we find him, he's interested in the due process. He's upset with the others that are there when they have this council that comes together and they're wanting to arrest Jesus. They're wanting to prosecute him. They're wanting to have a guilty verdict pretty much without any evidence. And he says, hey, we're supposed to have some sort of process here where we actually let people have hearings before we just render them guilty. And I think that's really cool. Well, anyways, that's Nicodemus, and send us your thoughts, hot, not, or sanctified, on Nicodemus. And on that, please subscribe to our channel, like and share our content, and that'll help us out greatly. Have a blessed day.